Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
From your playlist to your radio station, new music from Travis Scott featuring Bad Bunny and The Weeknd, K-pop.
I didn't like that.
I loved it.
That sounded too commercial.
That's the point. That's radio. From your playlist to your radio station. Saying world premiere sounds insane when it's already on all the streaming services.
I don't know if I like that. But anyway, good morning. We are the Breakfast Club. That was new music. Travis Scott, Bad Bunny, The Weeknd. Now let's get in some front page news. All right, now let's talk about this Florida Board of Education. What they doing now?
Once again, Florida Board of Education is back at it again. They have approved a new set of standards for how Black history should be taught in the state's public schools, sparking criticism from education leaders, the teachers union, and civil rights advocates who said students should be allowed to learn the full truth of American history. Now, the new standards require instruction for middle school students to include, listen very closely, they want to include how slaves developed skills in which some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Now, Florida Department of Education, Florida Department of Education said in a statement, "We are proud of the process that the department took to develop these standards, and any attempt to reduce slaves to just victims of oppression fails to recognize their strength and courage during a difficult time." They say that Florida students deserve to know how slaves took advantage of the circumstances they were in to benefit themselves. Now, Andrew Spar, the president of the Florida Education Association, disagrees. Take a listen to what both him and Vice President Harris had to say.
There's that old adage, if we don't learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. So if you are selecting what you can and can't learn in our schools, as the governor is doing right now for his own political ambitions, then kids are missing out on that education they deserve and need. If they don't learn about how slavery really came about in this country and how there were attempts to continue slavery even after the Emancipation Proclamation, if they don't learn about how there was separate and unequal in our schools, which Brown versus the Board of Education reversed and changed, and how states like Florida and other states fought against desegregation, then we're destined to repeat that.
Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
What I don't understand is they didn't like the old standards because they said what was being taught about American history wasn't true. Well, these new standards they created definitely aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah, and they taking credit for the strength and methods of survival that the enslaved learned based off a matter of circumstance. Like nobody taught us that. That was a matter of necessity. We had no choice.
Yeah, but right. I mean, we all hate all of it, but what's the solution? What do we have to do as people to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Well, this is why you have to self-educate your kids. I mean, as far as the legislation, yeah, you can push back against that, but I never, looked for any of these schools or institutions to teach my beautiful Black daughters what they actually should know. Same thing with us. Like, I'd learned so much about Black history by, doing my own reading at home and research at home. I never learned any of that in school.
Yeah, but is this now where we hopefully put our arms around the church and try to get more people in the church and do classes after maybe church. or yeah. Like on church. I'm just saying because that's where a huge place where Black people and Black families go to.
How about your home?
Well, besides the home, a lot of people don't know the education though.
Right, and a lot of people don't know how to teach. A lot of people don't know how to do that.
You can't go get the autobiography of Malcolm X. You can't go get Message to the Black Man.
It sounds easy, but a lot of people
can't go get the miseducation of the Negro.
But a lot of people are working so hard and they don't have time to do anything. They don't have time.
That's right, DJ.
Yes.
Everybody doesn't have time to do that.
Everybody don't have the opportunity.
And again, well, let's be clear. Some of these kids live in shelters, guys. So everybody that's not in a home. The public school system is not made up of people that have.
So let's everybody send books to has these a home. Then let's send the books that they need to these shelters. Why are y'all acting like these kids can't get access to books?
That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm saying. What is the solution? Is it sending books to the shelter? Is it making sure the churches are not going to do? Churches are doing classes to teach these students.
It's crazy how y'all always reduce Black people to the lowest possible.
No, we're not reducing.
Yes, y'all are. This is how y'all went to the shelters.
Well, hold on 1 second. No, that's ridiculous. It's not reducing to the lowest. That is just one solution. First solution is school board members are elected. So that's first things first. This is why it's important that local and state elections matter. We spend a lot of time talking about federal, but people need to really get involved and make sure they have the person that they want actually representing them. Secondly, no, Charlamagne, of course we teach self-taught, but there's some people that didn't start reading books and didn't start getting engaged until their 30s and 40s. So when we talk about the collective and overall and how do we take care of children that may not have parents that may be struggling, parents that work a lot, that just may not know how to teach their children. We saw
one parent household that where a mother or father's working 2-3 jobs, and when they come home, they don't have time to teach or don't have time to read or don't have time for it. My whole thing is, well, what's the solution? How do we make sure that all these students out here understand history? How do we make sure that parents understand the history?
Well, it starts by encouraging people to read. That's number one. Okay, and I don't know about y'all, but no matter how poor we were growing up in a single wide trailer in Moss Corner, South Carolina, my father and my mother was always putting a book in my face. It was some form of literature that was being
Your mother was a teacher, though.
Absolutely.
Right. Was a teacher, so it's a lot different.
But I had OGs around me too. I had OGs around me who were always encouraging me to read. We should always encourage our people to educate themselves.
We are encouraging that, but
reading is free.
Can it be more than one answer though?
Of course it is, but don't dismiss that kids can get access to books.
Nobody's dismissing kids can't get access to books. I'm asking what's the solution. We talk about the problems all the time, but what's the solution? How do we help? How do we make sure that a community of people can help and can teach? Because a lot of our education, a lot of our history, I didn't learn until I was a lot older. So if I didn't learn it when I was a lot older, when I mean a lot older, I was in my 30s and started learning a lot about education. And I went to a HBCU. So the fact that a lot of these people, a lot of these parents won't have the time and opportunity too. So as a community, how do we make sure that these kids have that knowledge?
Now that we know better, we do better. But there's never been a time where, I don't care how poor we were growing up, somebody was giving me a piece of literature. They were always telling us to educate ourselves. We was educating ourselves through music. You had rappers telling us to read certain books and certain literature when we was young.
Yeah, but then we could talk about mental health, why some people really didn't understand mental health till 30, 40 years old, or even with financial literacy. A lot of people don't know about financial literacy, don't know about investing, don't know about accounting, don't know about any of that stuff. And a lot of people get that knowledge from school, but that's things that we can't be self-taught because we didn't know it. We don't understand it. But now we're figuring how that we can teach. But a lot of people don't know the books that you're talking about, so we have to give them knowledge on the books.
That's why we talk about them. That's why we reference them.
But it's more than but exactly. So DJ Envy, to answer your question, I hope that programs are actually created. So for example, I did a whole podcast about it where the NAACP was discouraging people to come to Florida, and I was saying I wish they would spend time on developing an actual program to supplement what they're taking out of the school system. So you're right, DJ. It actually requires a program.
Y'all didn't have the book it program in school?
Right. They got the book program now. Does that mean that the literacy rate?
Oh no, the literacy rate is terrible in Black and brown communities.
So that's to the point of saying it's not that people are not encouraging people to read. It's not that people are not giving people books. The bottom line is, how do we get them to do it? And what DJ Envy is saying, how can we develop programs to be able to say, hey, this is what we want our children to know. I want another point. I want to point something else out here. Elementary school teachers, the elementary students, they're being taught just to recognize who Rosa Parks is and Zell Hurston. They're not even being taught what they did in history. They just want to recognize just their photo. So this is a real issue.
And that goes back to my original point about how we have to self-educate our children at home.
Right.
I've never looked at any of these white institutions to teach my kids about Black history. I've never depended on that. Ever.
But that's great. Well, we have to take care of the collective that don't have the parents that think the way that you do, and you've been blessed, but everybody doesn't have that opportunity, Charlamagne.
I learned that way. I didn't teach, before I was teaching my kids that, people were putting that in me. That's something that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Elijah Muhammad, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, any great Black leader we can name, Marcus Garvey was telling us to self-educate our kids.
Right.
All
you
right,
were blessed.
That is front page news. Get it off your chest.
Spicy.
800-585-1051. If you need to vent, phone lines are wide open again. 800-585-1051. Get it off your chest. It's a Friday, guys. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. Now let's get in some front page news. Teslin Figaro is here. Good morning, Tez.
Yeah, good morning. Happy Friday, DJ Envy and Charlamagne the God.
Yes, ma'am. Now let's jump right into it. Former Northwestern football players announced lawsuits over alleged hazing. Let's discuss that.
Yeah, more than 15 former Northwestern University football players have joined a planned lawsuit against the university about alleged hazing in the school's program. The athletes detailed the painful, emotional, physical, and sometimes sexual allegations against Northwestern football. 26-year-old Lloyd Yates, who was a quarterback and wide receiver from 2015 to 2017, said that physical, emotional, and sexual abuse was normalized. I want you to take a listen on some of the claims that the players experienced, and I'll give you a little bit more information on the other side.
It is apparent to us that it is a toxic culture that was rampant in the athletic department at Northwestern University. I mean, you had people holding them down, dry humping them. You had them being forced to participate in activities involving nudity and the touching of one another.
That was Attorney Benjamin Crump, who is working with these players, and wanted to just give a point, because there was a whistleblower that made this public. And so once the whistleblower came forward, everybody, kind of joined in. Lloyd Yates, particularly has received a lot of blowback from folks, saying you shouldn't be speaking up. He actually, from my understanding, is a legacy student. And for those that don't know, means, he comes from a family that went to Northwestern. And so folks are really, coming down on him about, speaking up and how he shouldn't speak up. He said that the culture was so strong that they had to go along with it in order to survive being able to play. He said that if you spoke up, it could have affected time on the field, and that the coaches were aware of the behavior.
Has the university made a statement?
Yeah, they did. Actually, Charlamagne, they said that they cannot comment on pending litigation, but did issue a statement saying that the university is working to ensure we have in place appropriate accountability for our athletic department.
I mean, I think it's crazy because all these schools, I ain't gonna say all the schools, but a majority of schools have a lot of hazing, especially when you're joining these athletic teams, or if you're trying to join a sorority or fraternity. But it's just, how much involvement does the school have? You know what I mean? Because a lot of these are players passed on that they think is quote unquote tradition. So I wonder how much does the school actually know when it comes to it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in this particular case, they said that the coach absolutely knew, and would just, kind of let it slide like a lot of schools do until, they get caught and somebody speaks up. I just thought this story was just interesting because you hear a lot about women with sexual assault. And so I thought this was, really important to bring to everybody's attention that it does happen to men as well, even in fields like, football, that you would assume, may not encounter those things with young men. So let's just keep an eye on that story and make sure we, continue to pay close attention to those things.
I've been dry humped up here. What does that mean for me?
Are you crazy?
No. If you hunt, you can hear.
Well, he also said showing pictures of nudity.
That ain't never happened.
Bro, you gave me an ass with testicles.
That wasn't a picture. Okay. That was not a picture.
All right, well, let's talk about America's heat crisis.
Yeah, I want to bring this attention. We talked a little bit about this earlier this week with the extreme heat and climate change is real. I want to just bump this up quickly that they said this summer it has become America's new reality, brutal reality. But local, state, and federal aid programs and infrastructure, they're trying to help people cool that don't have air conditions. So the National Energy Assistant Directors Association, which represents state energy assistance programs for low-income Americans, said that there is no national plan to help lower-income families to transition to higher temperatures. The solutions they have are based on the shorter heat waves, and as the temperature continues to rise, they don't have any solutions, basically. So bottom line, they said that public policy has not caught up. A lot of folks out there don't have the cooling necessary that they need, and so they're asking that more funding be put into those programs in order to make sure that people survive this heat. So just another example that climate change is real, and this rising heat is affecting many people across the country.
Climate change is definitely real, and this is what happens. You can say this is a poor problem all you want, but power outages can happen anywhere during a heat wave for a number of reasons.
Absolutely.
And the most obvious is because the power grids can get knocked out.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So everybody turning up their air conditioners at the same time can cause the power grid and cause the power to go out. And what kind of world we gonna live in if you got to be in 115 degree heat and ain't no AC?
Yeah.
You already know people don't know how to act when it's hot.
Well, not only that, you got to think about it like this, with the heat rate or rising like that, that means power bill and electric bills are going to rise.
That's right.
A lot of people ain't going to be able to afford it because it's super duper expensive. And the way electric bills and power bills look now, I mean, it's getting
That's
ridiculous.
Right. So you can keep acting like, these problems won't impact you if you, got money or if you well off. You out of your damn mind. We dealing with Mother Nature here, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Mother Nature don't care how much money you got.
Not at all.
Right.
All right. Well, that is your front page news. Thank you, Teslin, and you have a great weekend, TS.
And make sure you subscribe to the Straight Shot No Chaser podcast on the Black Effect iHeartRadio podcast network, and follow Teslin Figaro on all social media platforms. And she will be discussing all of the things that we talked about this week in depth on her podcast.
All right.
And we about to talk about one now, even though it is Freaky Freaky Friday.
Yeah, we'll do Freaky Freaky Friday later, but we're going to open up the phone lines. 800-585-1051. During front page news in the 6 o'clock hour, Teslin was talking about Florida Board of Education approved new Black history standards
that teach how slaves develop skills for their personal benefit.
Right.
And I think the question we asked was,
what are some suggestions to better educate future generations on Black history?
Well, listen, man, I was always taught to never rely on white institutions to teach our kids, you know, and since white propaganda got people thinking that Black people don't read and Black parents don't encourage their kids to read, I think we should discuss some ways to properly educate our kids. Like, we know their literacy rate is low in Black and brown communities. You know, we could talk about why that is, but we can also talk about people who can read, have access to books, and don't. And nowadays, man, you don't even have to pick up a book and physically read. You can listen to Audible books.
Right.
You know, you can listen to the autobiography of Malcolm X. You can listen to the Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. You know, you can listen. Well, I don't think they got Message to the Black Man yet, but you can listen to a lot of these great books nowadays. Yeah,
and I was saying earlier that, you know, that's maybe it's something like maybe doing classes at the church where Black families already go to anyway on Sundays. And I remember as a kid, we used to go to the church and they used to have music classes on one day and reading classes on this day. But, you know, what are some suggestions to better educate future generations of Black history? What?
To that point, the Bible is some of the first literature that people read.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the first thing that people learn to read is actually Bible scriptures. Growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, I was reading Bible scriptures. I was reading the Awake magazines and the Watchtowers. They had this big yellow book called My Book of Bible Stories, which had all of these pictures in it, you know? So, I mean, that could be a start.
Yeah, but we got to encourage it because, you know, when I was a kid, when I was in church, 9 times out of 10, I was sleeping. Or, you know, when Jehovah's Witness or Seventh-day Adventists would come ring the doorbells, we would not answer the door, or, you know, or we wouldn't take the pamphlet, or we would be very disrespectful in Queens. But, you know, we have to start educating our community, and let's discuss that. 800-585-1051. What are some suggestions to better educate future generations on Black history? Let's discuss. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.